finally, as we move on to just a bit of an impromptu topic here, because it happened, the press conference happened last night over in America. That is Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. It's happening. We thought maybe because of an injury, they might curtail this conversation, this exhibition, this fight between the two. Legend that is Mike Tyson back into a boxing ring at the age of 58, I believe it is, closer to his 60s now, is taking on viral sensation Jake Paul, who did have the favor of boxing fans, hardcore boxing fans, after sort of doing the whole crossover influencer scene, started being the birth of that, along with his brother Logan Paul. Then sort of curtailing that and thinking, you know what, I want to help fighters out. I want to start my own promotions, MVP promotions. I want to start managing fighters. I want to bring in like so Amanda Serrano, Ashton Silva, who of course was on the end of a bad KO of the year contender. But I want to start bringing these type of fighters in. I want to help push Amanda Serrano so she can be on my undercards and she can get the spotlight that she hasn't got so far and get the paydays that she hasn't got so far. And then he's started fighting, professional fighters. It's not the most high profile of people, but the idea was that he was going to, be on the proper path of a professional fighter and not entertain these gimmick type of fights. But that doesn't seem to have worked so far. I don't think the broadcasters have enjoyed that offering. I don't think the numbers have been coming in as they were coming in when he did fight influencers of his ilk, like the likes of Tommy Fury, who is a professional fighter, sure, but the Tyron Woodleys, that sort of crossover fights, Ben Askren's, those sort of nights were bigger nights. Diaz were bigger nights than what had been offered by the professional course. So Netflix have come in. Netflix have said, you know what, we want you versus Mike Tyson, and it's going to happen later on this year. And for what it's worth, Josh, from judging by the amount of cameras, the amount of phones in the audience, the amount of buzz this fight is getting, just how big of a platform Netflix is, this is probably going to be the biggest event of the year. This is probably going to be the biggest fight night of the year because of the spotlight it's going to get, because of the machine that's behind him, because of the two fighters involved in Tyson versus Jake Paul. But do you have the appetite for this fight, Josh?
Do I have appetite? No appetite for it whatsoever. And to be honest, I'm surprised there is so much appetite in the boxing world for this. I think many of the people that want to see this fight are fans that probably don't tune in week to week. They've seen the name Mike Tyson, they've seen the name Jake Paul, and they're just interested in seeing that fight, and they don't read into it any further from a sort of medical point of view of someone of Mike Tyson's age against someone like Jake Paul in his late 20s. That's dangerous for Jake Paul in one sense, that if Tyson still has the power, that is dangerous compared to the power that Jake Paul has previously felt. And on the other hand, we don't know what sort of state that Mike Tyson's really in. We see the 5-10 second clips on Instagram coming from Tyson of him hitting a bag or just doing some pads in the gym, and sure, he looks in good shape certainly for his age, but he hasn't taken a big right hook or a big uppercut or a huge shot in some time now. And just what's going to happen if and when Jake Paul lands multiple shots on Mike Tyson? Is that gonna be an issue down the line for him? We don't know how stable he is mentally, and it just worries me, to be honest, Damon, that we're seeing these fights and there's so much appetite for them. I was sort of seeing the appetite for not misfits generally, but crossover boxing seemed to be dwindling a little. I remember early on when we were having those early sort of Jake Paul fights and the KSI fights, and when we had Tommy Fury against Jake Paul, the appetite was absolutely massive, and it was to our benefit on SecondsOut covering those fight weeks. They were absolutely huge but the more recent ones don't seem to be attracting quite the same numbers. And I'm surprised that this has attracted the numbers it has. I don't expect boxing fans to watch this, but there are certainly sort of a section of the public that will be watching it, but it's not something that interests me.
Yeah, this is one of those moments where you kind of hope it's some sort of orchestrated type of event and got this sort of plan, and it'll be like this entertaining kind of night. But when you hear really that this is going to be actually a fight, and apparently Mike Tyson's calling for this to be an actual fight, you get a little bit worried. I think there is a way that something like this can exist in some form and still be competitive and still be entertaining, and that's if they went the route of it being point scoring. You went to outpoint your opponent as opposed to looking to knock them out. If they did something like that, there might be a way in where this can exist in this sort of form of Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson in a point scoring type of event. So, a lot of jabs are being used, a lot of kind of, neither of them are really kind of looking to the rules of the fight isn't you're supposed to knock out your opponent here. You're supposed to just gain as much points as possible. I think that might be a way in this can flourish. It was just a bit. I remember when Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. had that fight, and for me, it looked like Roy Jones Jr. knew how to operate under the terms of an exhibition. Mike Tyson, for me, looked like he was going as much as he could go for his age and how much his body could give. And that worries me a little bit as well, too, because I don't think Mike Tyson can really be involved in exhibition. I think he has to go, and I think he has to think in the mindset of this is a fight for me. And I think that will spur on Jake Paul to do the same thing, and Jake Paul will probably be able to cause more harm to Mike Tyson. I do get worried when, and I don't know if you remember this one, Josh, but this is always in the back of my mind when it comes to fights like this. Did you see Holyfield versus Vito Belfort?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And that was just a sad, like, and you knew, like, going into that fight, I think it was held by Triller. Triller put on that fight. And boxing fans who had anything about them, who knew a bit about Vito Belfort and MMA and about Evander Holyfield and how he was and conversations interviewing him in the past, like, no real fit state to fight. No real reason for him to fight. And it was sad just seeing him get knocked down and seeing him get hurt and seeing him have to come up off the canvas so many years later after his professional boxing career had ended. Like, what was the need for him to do that? But it happened, and they seem to want to take the money as well too. There's got to be people better placed around them to handle that situation and say, no, Evander, you don't need this. Thankfully, I think it seems to be the case that he said that now. But Mike Tyson seems to be the one who has taken that opportunity, taken that money there to have this big event and big night. And what it could mean as well too is that if this is successful though, Josh, if Netflix do have a big rousing fight night where they get loads of subscribers, loads of pay-per-views, whatever it is, loads of eyes on the platform, which I imagine that they will, the appetite is going to be for this and not for traditional boxing. It'll be another nail in the coffin for traditional boxing. Because if this garners the huge numbers like we're predicting, and yeah, sure, like we said, it's to our benefit too, but that means that the appetite for actual boxing diminishes, surely, and Netflix won't want to try and get in for Fury versus AJ or Beterbiev versus Bivol 2 or whatever. They'll want to do Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor next and call it boxing, not actually go for traditional boxing. And that's the problem as well, I think, Josh.
Yeah, I think it would be huge for boxing to have a backer like Netflix on board, whether that's sort of streaming live action or even sort of a Drive to Survive type documentary show. We've seen what that's done for Formula One, and other sports have had it too. There's a golf show, I think it's called Full Swing, which I've watched on there, which is really, really interesting stuff. And I think generally documentary content has been huge for growing sports, and there isn't much out there on Netflix anyway in terms of boxing, and it's obviously a huge subscriber base on Netflix, and it would be a big move for boxing to get some action on there, whether it is to be documentary or live. But yeah, as you say, if if the appetite is there for something like a Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. And I wonder who's the bigger draw in that fight as well. To be honest, I wonder who's actually drawing the most eyes, why people are actually tuning in or purchasing tickets. Are they going to see Jake Paul? Are they going to see how much Mike Tyson has left? I don't know what you think about that, Eamon.
Yeah, no, I think they're going to see Mike Tyson. I remember when I got to for Seconds Out, they sent me to Dubai to go watch Mayweather versus Deji, and I was kind of in my mind, I was thinking, you know what, I wasn't a big boxing fan back in the day when Mayweather was in his pomp, more towards the tail end of his career when he's fighting like Berto and all that. Um, I kind of followed boxing a little bit more, and I thought when I got to see the Deji fight, I was covering that one. I was thinking, you know what, it's kind of great to be able to watch Mayweather in some form and be able to see some of what he had left. And I'm sure he can carry some of that into this exhibition. And I'll get to see Mayweather dance and show the defense and things like that. And it'll be a nice moment. And it was a little bit, it was good. I did get those moments, and I got to see the big entourage that followed with it, and the entourage that bustled and bumbled through, and the Mayweather pads up close and personal. They were great little moments to see and to watch with my own eyes. But then it was a bit sad seeing someone who's a defensive mastermind, and he comes out of a fight with Deji with a bruised eye, and he's like, yeah, so what? I got caught. I'm a little bit slower. I'm a little bit, I'm not as fast as I used to be. This is a different career from my actual professional boxing career.